Is your business protected against the threat of malicious litigation and frivolous lawsuits? Are you sinking company profits into marketing campaigns that do nothing to contribute to the growth of your business? Bottled Business Sense provides practical business perspectives that uniquely emphasize both legal and media marketing strategies to protect and ensure the longevity of your business. And whether you're trying to provide a startup business with some level of stability or an established business with foolproof asset and estate protection, or simply attempting to get a better return for your business marketing dollars, Bill Bernard and Rick Moscoso will expose potential pitfalls to ensure the security and growth of your business, free from unwanted expense and the threat of litigation. You'll learn how to implement marketing and protection tools equal to those used by today's most successful corporations. Let's join Bill and Rick for today's Bottled Business Sense show.
Hey there, everyone. Welcome to the Bottled Business Sense show. It's 10 a.m. on our live stream today. Thank you for joining us. If you are new to the Bottled Business Sense show, welcome. For those of you returning or watching the replay, welcome back. You can always say hi, welcome, or put in any comments down below. Whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, we'd love to hear where you're watching us from, and just say hi. So with that, you have a great episode today centered around the topic of entities, and for that I am going to bring on my co-host, Mr. Bill Bernard.
Yes, sir. How are you, Rick? How are you, everybody? It's good that we're back on again, and that we have an interesting topic, I think, to bring up, especially in these dangerous times with COVID-19 around us all. And what I thought I'd talk about today is changing a business structure. You know, we've talked early on, I should say, about having a business entity. In fact, our first show was called Entisize, which means that in order to have some sort of liability protection, you should go ahead and form a business entity. But what about changing a business entity? And what about how COVID-19 might affect the current business status that you have? And even if it doesn't, there are other extraneous factors that may affect whether or not you want to change your business entity status. So let's talk a little bit about how businesses may evolve over time, and then we can bring in some specific issues about what might want to happen in order for you to decide that a change might be effective for you. You know, sole proprietorships and general partnerships, something I've always frowned upon, are not state registered business entities. So you don't have any necessary paperwork to file, any kind of responsibilities towards state government to deal with, no meetings to hold, no articles of incorporation or articles of organization to draw up, no bylaws, that sort of thing. So those kinds of things might be a starting point for some people, and based on what we're going to talk about today, may also come into play in terms of maybe you deciding that you want to form your first formal business entity. So let's talk about some specific reasons why you might want to form your entity, and or more specifically change an entity that you may already have to another existing entity. Well, there's always the personal liability aspect of it, personal liability protection. We know that a sole proprietor, a general partnership, they share the burdens of expense and liability. But what if you're a sole proprietorship or a general partnership and you decide to hire more employees now? What if your business is expanding? Well, you're going to need some protection. And an LLC or some form of corporate structure, such as an S corporation or C corporation, is going to give you that personal liability protection. Okay, in other words, your home, your cars, all of your personal assets are protected as long as you maintain the entity structure in the way that state law requires. What you have at risk is your business assets. But of course, you should have business liability insurance. which would allow you to pay a deductible on a claim and then have that insurance protect you for the rest of your business assets. So while your business assets might be exposed to a claim in some form or another, your machinery, your business vehicles, that sort of thing, your personal assets are protected by way of a business entity. So growing your business may very well necessitate the establishment of a business entity other than one that's not registered with the state, such as the sole proprietorship or a general partnership. But what about your self-employment tax burden? Let me give you a scenario. By creating an S corporation for purposes of tax treatment, let's say you have an LLC and you're unhappy with the self-employment taxes that are being imposed upon you by way of the LLC. You might want to choose to change that LLC business structure to a degree and claim S corporation tax treatment. What does that mean? Well, that means that you convert to a C corporation for purposes of lowering Social Security and Medicare obligations. Because owners pay self-employment taxes on their wages and salaries, but not on income paid to them as distributions. We're going to talk about that in a little more detail in a minute. So an LLC's members are all in high individual income tax brackets, and all profits from the business flow to their personal tax returns. It's a pass-through taxable entity, right? So your profits are going to you, and you claim them for purposes of taxes on your individual tax return. But the corporate income tax structure now is lower than on individual rates. So what if we took the LLC and changed it into a C corporation? As a C corporation, rather than all the profits flowing through to the business owner's personal tax returns, only their income from wages, salaries, and distributions would flow through to their individual returns. Therefore, profits left in the business, while still getting taxed, because you have the double taxation for a C corp, are going to be taxed at the lower corporate rate. So in that sense, a C corporation may be beneficial. But see, you have to weigh these things. You have to review all these things with your tax specialist to find out if the amount of money and the profits you're bringing in would be beneficial to you forming a C corporation. Because while you have the double taxation of the C corp, it may be that having most of these profits taxed at the lower corporate rate would be more beneficial for you. So these are things that you need to look into as your business grows, as you hire more employees, as maybe you're looking for more money to invest in your business. All of these things point to a C corporation as a potential choice as a business structure.
Yeah, Bill, we talked about this years ago. I think it was. We had an accountant on the on our previous show early on, and she talked about, or we had her talk about the tax ramifications and different structures that different businesses should really consider as they start to expand. So I guess the point being is you definitely have to have a tax partner, a tax specialist, like you had mentioned, in order to really understand, which situation is going to be best for your business, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely, vital. If you don't have a tax specialist, either a CPA or a tax attorney, and then a business attorney, maybe you got a business attorney who can do as a tax attorney too. But if, let's say, you have a CPA and a business lawyer, you got to have them on board. You don't wait to run into problems. You got to have them on board from the very start. Anybody who doesn't do that is really a little bit foolish in terms of wanting to start up a business that is recognizable, that will continue to be profitable. You're going to have to really do that if you're serious about making your business successful. Now, we talked a little bit about the value of a C corporation in the last example I gave you, but let's go back to that self-employment tax example that I brought up initially, because that's another issue that may want you to decide, or may allow you to decide, that if I have an LLC, maybe switching to a C corp under the example I just gave you isn't going to work for me. But maybe switching, keeping the LLC and switching to an S corp for purposes of taxes, tax selection would be beneficial. This is important. With an S corporation status, the corporation's profits and losses, as we said, flow through the personal tax return of the individual. The corporation's profits are taxed at the shareholder level according to the share of ownership at the applicable individual tax rates. Shareholders that are also employees of the corporation only pay self-employment taxes on the wages and salary that they take out from the corporation. Dividend income paid to shareholders is not subject to self-employment taxes, meaning Medicare and Social Security. So you're an owner of an LLC. You take S corporation select status for tax purposes. Your wages and salary, if you're an employee as well of that LLC, will be taxed at the individual income tax rate, pass-through tax flow entity, right? But your dividends that you take out, while taxable, will not be subject to Social Security and Medicare. Only your wages and your salary as an employee will be subject to Social Security and Medicare taxes. Any dividends you received by way of excess profit from that company will not be subject to Medicare and Social Security. So it's something to consider when you want to change your entity status by way of tax purposes. Now, understand here, you got two ways to do this. You can keep your LLC if you have one and change to S corporation status for tax purposes, or you can simply change your LLC to an S corporation, full-blown S corporation, and change the company totally. Those are things you're going to want to consider by bringing into play other extraneous factors that we're going to talk about a little bit at the end of the broadcast, and I'll touch upon that in a minute. Let's talk about S corporation treatments for LLCs a little more specifically, because I think it's important. The individual income tax rate applies to all taxable business income as before, but not all of the income is subject to self-employment taxes, as we've just said. The income paid as distribution is not self-employment taxes. We just talked about that, and it's important to bring that up again and emphasize that. Keep in mind that the salary that the LLC pays its owners must be fairly compensable for what you do in that LLC. So in other words, if you know your dividends are not subject to Social Security and Medicare taxes, but only to your personal income tax, you can't start taking a lot of dividends and not pay yourself a decent, reasonable salary in order to escape Medicare and the Social Security taxes, because that's going to raise a red flag to the IRS. They're going to say, wait a minute, why are these wages so low? So again, you need to really talk to your tax specialist to make sure that what you're taking out as a salary, because you're also an employee of this LLC selecting S corporation tax status, what you're making as an employee and what's fair and reasonable and compensable for the duties that you perform for the LLC. Now, if you're a silent owner of the LLC, if you're not an employee, that's a different story. You don't really have to worry about much other than the taxes you pay from the profits and the dividends. So what are some other objectives or contingencies, you might say, that might make you consider changing whatever entity you might have to another business entity? Well, what if you're trying to raise more money? We know that a C corporation is vastly used for selling stock that would provide a path for a company to get more funds that it requires for additional growth. This is when you're really thinking about expanding into a larger business. Remember some other considerations when you think about changing a structure. So in other words, you're thinking about this structural change because of some of the factors that I previously mentioned. But what about foreign ownership? Remember that LLC owners can have non-U.S. citizens as a member of the LLC, but an S corporation, you must be a U.S. citizen to be a member of that S corporation. So these are some factors that you may want to consider and throw into the mix. And this is where your attorney would come in. You'd have a consultation with your attorney. You might have a consultation, frankly, with your attorney and your tax specialist all in one to bring all of these factors into consideration and have you sit down. And that brings me to some basic steps that you might want to consider as we end the show. I want to bring up some of these really basic things that you might want to consider in helping you make a decision as to whether or not you should change your business structure. One, write a plan of conversion. Think about the factors and objectives that you're thinking about. Get approval from the company's governing individuals. If you have an LLC, the members. If you have an S corporation, your board of directors. 3, complete the state's requirements for the formation of the proper documents, articles of organization for an LLC, articles of incorporation for a C Corp or an S Corp. Complete the certificate of conversion, number 4, and that you can file online. And then finally, number 5, file the new entity formation document and the certificate of conversion with the state. Make sure it's with the state. Okay, and again, you can do that online. Remember that if you're going to be forming a corporate entity, you're going to have to draft bylaws and elect corporate officers and a board of directors. So I finally want to talk about what are some of the eligibility requirements of a corporation, more specifically an S corporation, because that's the one people typically choose when your business isn't gigantic, when you're not trying to raise a lot of money, and also for purposes of selecting your tax classification. Remember that the IRS has eligibility requirements to form an S corporation. You must have an LLC, a partnership, or a C corporation already in place if you're going to make this conversion. Your entity must be domestic. Okay, it has to be a United States based entity. Your company must have 100 or fewer shareholders. Your shareholders, as I said, cannot be non-resident aliens, and your corporation can only have one class of stock. You are allowed to have voting and non-voting as one class of stock. And again, these are some things you want to discuss with your business attorney. And then, of course, you must file your Form 2553, which is an election by small business corporation form. It has to be filed online to select S corporation tax status. And finally, once you have this all in place, remember that none of this makes any sense if you don't maintain your company, you don't maintain your corporate status. And I'm specifically talking about a corporation now. You must select a board of directors. You must draft corporate bylaws. You must formally register your business by filing those articles that I just mentioned. You must obtain an employee classification number. Number 5, you must apply for all applicable business licenses and permits that are required locally where your business is. Number 6, you must issue stock certificates. And number 7, you must comply with all legal and tax requirements, such as submitting annual reports, holding board of directors meetings, holding shareholders meetings, and keeping detailed minutes of your corporate meetings, because otherwise it's going to be found to be a shell corporation, and anybody who comes after you will be able to reach your personal assets if they can prove that your corporation was just a mere shell for what you're really functioning as an individual or sole proprietorship in terms of your functioning business. So be careful of that. So these are some of the things that I think you need to look at. Look before you leap. Consult with a business lawyer, with a tax specialist. Make sure you have them on board, and make sure that they're there to give you all of the advice that's required when you start this business, or when you change your business entity status from one entity to another. Okay, I hope that's been helpful, and it it's very, very important. And again, with COVID-19, some of this may have affected your business in certain ways, to where you want to size down, or to where you want to select a specific status for tax purposes, or where you're concerned about liability and may want to form an entity for one reason or another. All of these things play into the mix, and again, that's where your specialist, your attorney, and your tax person come into play.
Oh, that's funny that you said that, because I'm going to give a shout out here to Sharon Masler. She's watching the live stream here. She says hi. And so, I can't echo what Bill said.
Guru, huh? The tax guru.
Yeah, the tax guru here.
Well, I hope you've approved, Miss Masler, with everything I said. You're the tax guru and I'm not, but these are things that people need to know, and I've given them the basics. They need to consult with somebody like you when they want to really get into the specifics of what their own business is doing.
Yeah, exactly. So, in any event, great episode. I was going to ask you something, Bill. So when a company does the conversion or submits for a conversion from one entity to another, typically how long does that take?
Well, that's a good question. With the way things are going, with the state now, I've actually read an article on this recently. What I mean by that is this: the state is so backlogged with various unemployment issues because of the virus that a lot of people think it doesn't flow over into other departments, but it does cause a backlog to some extent. But typically, once you make this change, once you make the conversion, it doesn't take very long at all. It could take, in fact, you may be able to do it on an expedited basis, but it could take anywhere from 30 days to 60 days or longer. I've known clients that have done it within a period of 2 weeks, but those weren't during these times. So I would let your attorney handle it, and let your attorney keep abreast of what's going on, and check back on the website for the status of what's going on once you file the conversion papers. But that's a hard question to answer. I don't think there's any typical time guidelines that I would feel comfortable giving.
Yeah. Well, great. That's all great information. We've talked about, and Bill has discussed this in length in many different episodes across our years here. And you can always look for that on our website at bottlebusinessshow.com. Catch us. Well, if you're watching us on Facebook, here we are, or YouTube, but you can also see more info on Twitter and LinkedIn. And if you
by the way, if anybody wants to go back and review that specific show that we had with Sharon some years back, which was, quite a while now. It must have been 3-4 years, maybe longer.
Yeah.
That show, I believe, was one of our highest rated shows. So that might be something that would be worthwhile by going to our website to check that out, or at YouTube. And Rick, you can give them that information if you would. That'd be great.
Yeah. You know what I'll do is I'll look back in the archives and get the URL, and I'll post it both in underneath this video in YouTube and Facebook. And then that way you can just have a direct link to that episode. So, folks,
and where can they find us, Rick? Typically, I know you. If they go to YouTube, or they obviously we have bottlebusinessshow.com, and I guess on YouTube you just punch in Bottle Business and Show. But that's really all they need to know in order to find us on any social media site, right?
Yeah, basically on Facebook, YouTube, we're at Bottle Business and Show. Same with Twitter and LinkedIn. So we're pretty much centered around these four main platforms, or you can go to the site as well. We have the live stream directly fed into our website along with the replay. So if we're catching you on the replay and you have more questions, you can always reach out to Bill at this information here. I'll also post this in the information below this video. So with that, Bill, any closing comments, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to mention, for any watch geeks out there, Rick and I are going to start on June 20th a watch review and watch sales show. We're going to stream it live. I'm going to have everything from high-end to low-end pieces available to look at and to talk about and to educate people about. And I'm also going to have from time to time pieces that would be for sale that people could want to purchase, because we have a site called FB Watch Forum, which you can also find on Facebook. And we really enjoy this. This is really totally for fun. Of course, this show's for fun, but also for educational purposes. The other show is just going to really be for a lot of fun. And if you know any watch geeks out there, anybody that loves timepieces, then please tell them about it, because Rick and I are gonna really show off our wares, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, I will preface it with, I am a extreme newbie when it comes to this, and just like Bill's shirt says, he is a watch geek champion. So you don't want to miss it. If you're new to watches, you're gonna learn a lot from this gentleman right here. So I'm really looking forward to doing that and showcasing some of the timepieces that he has.
It's what old folks do in the spare time. What are you gonna say?
There you go. All right. We haven't, probably in the next couple of weeks, we'll post it to the website and all our social platforms when the next episode is. Typically it's bi-monthly. As soon as we determine which week that is, I'll post it on, and it'll probably be in 2 weeks, huh, Bill?
Yes, I would say, yeah. We try to do it bi-monthly. So we try to do it bi-monthly. It's not always on a strictly 2 weeks to 2 week schedule, but we'll make sure we post it in plenty of time for anybody who's interested.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Bill, for your expertise. Really appreciate it. Reach out to Bill at the information below if you have more questions, and you can also watch the replay on Facebook and YouTube, or reach out to us on Twitter, LinkedIn, or bottlebusinessshow@gmail.com for any additional questions. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. We will see you in a couple of weeks, and be on the lookout for the invite for the Watch Geek, Facebook FB Watch Geek Forum live stream. That's going to be coming on the 20th of June. So can't wait to see you guys there. And with that, Bill and I are out.
Yep.
Thanks for joining us.
Everybody.
All right.